And welcome back, YouTube community. This is the Order in Chaos show, and I am your host, Ron Bell, coming at you today from wonderful Wasilla, Alaska. A little bit about the weather today. It's about -2 out. Not too bad. It's better than the 15 below it was this morning. We got about a foot of snow this past week, so that's finally good for the winter that we haven't been having up here. We had some pretty bad windstorms, but thank God those are gone. Man, I'd rather have a couple feet of snow than 3-4 days of 100-mile-an-hour gust winds. Anyway, let's get everything situated and ready for the show today. I'm gonna have my pouches and caffeine. I'm human just like everybody else. So today's episode is episode 4, titled Critical Mass, When Reality Starts Pushing Back. If you've been following the rest of the series, we've touched on the cornerstone of the show, silence and pressure, what pressure looks like in an expanded scope on a geopolitical level. Now, today, we're going to zoom that scope way back in internally and discuss it on a more personal level. And today, I want to talk about something that doesn't usually get discussed out loud. Not systems, not politics, not instruction. It's what happens inside a person when pressure starts adding up and there's nowhere left to put it. Because pressure doesn't usually show up at once. It accumulates quietly. Every avoided responsibility, every rationalization, every time you tell yourself a story that makes today easier, but tomorrow heavier. Critical mass isn't when life becomes unbearable. It's when the stories we tell ourselves finally run out of room. And we all keep a private ledger. Not for other people and not for the world. But we keep a private ledger for ourselves. It's made up of things that we know that we did. Things we know we avoid. Moments where we understood clearly what responsibility would have required. It looks like this. It's not one big mistake. It's a series of small ones that you keep justifying. It's knowing a conversation needs to happen, but pushing it off another week, and then another, and then another. It's saying yes when you mean no, not because you're kind, but because you're afraid of what conflict might expose. On a personality level, that would be high trait agreeableness. It's replaying the same arguments in your head over and over and over, and rehearsing the explanations you never actually got to say out loud. It's knowing exactly where you cut corners and hoping no one ever makes you account for them. It's building an identity around what has happened to you in the past or present, instead of taking ownership of what you are responsible for now. It's telling yourself, this is just who I am. When what you really mean is, I don't want to see what I would be without this mask. Now, none of this breaks you immediately. What breaks you is the accumulation. Every avoided responsibility takes up space. And eventually, there's nowhere left to put it. Now, I'm not saying this from theory. I'm saying it because I have felt that compression myself quite a few times. More times than I can remember, honestly. Now, there's a principle to physics that applies here also. And I've used this quite often. It's an object in motion stays in motion unless acted on by a greater external force. And that's Newton's first law of physics. Now, it's not just physics, that's people also. Patterns don't stop on their own. Avoidance doesn't correct itself. Stories don't collapse because they're false or untrue. Things will keep moving in that same direction until something interrupts them. And when that interruption doesn't come early, it comes with force. Now, mistakes aren't the problem. Mistakes can be repaired. The real debt comes from knowing and choosing not to act. The sin of omission. That kind of knowing doesn't disappear. It accrues interest. And it compounds. At first, the stories that we tell ourselves help. They soften the edges. They reduce the shame. They let us sleep at night. But over time, the story stops being a cushion and starts becoming a shelter. It explains everything, justifies everything, and eventually replaces accountability altogether. And when that happens, pressure has nowhere to go but inward. And this is where capacity matters. Not intelligence, not charm, not confidence, capacity. Emotional capacity. The ability to tolerate shame without collapsing. The ability to say, I did this, without immediately reaching for excuses or justification. The willingness to face consequences instead of reframing them as persecution. Instead of adopting a victim's mentality. Now, some people don't lack intelligence. They lack internal room to absorb responsibility. So when pressure rises, it naturally compresses. Because there's a ceiling. And unless you grow, that ceiling stays where it's at. Now there's a moment that's usually quiet when the old explanations just stop working. The words don't land. The justifications sound thin. The story no longer convinces even the person telling it. Now this is the moment that I like to call paying the piper. Now it doesn't arrive as punishment. It arrives as recognition. It's the sudden realization that there's nothing left to trade. No more space to shift the blame. No more room to renegotiate reality. This is where people get tempted to reach for the noise again, to twist the truth just enough to feel alive. Now, you can bend the fabric of reality for a while. You can stretch it. You can rewrite it just enough to keep moving. But the problem is simple. You cannot bend that fabric and expect it not to snap back on you really, really hard. Now, you're going to pay a price for everything that you do and everything that you don't do. And you don't get to decide which poison you're going to take. Now, there's a line of scripture that captures this without drama or threat. It's just clarity. It's, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. And that's from Romans 12:2. Now, I don't hear that as theology. I hear it as a warning about what happens when fantasy replaces responsibility. Now, renewal doesn't mean that you become someone new. It means updating your internal map when reality proves you wrong. Typically, what happens next varies depending on the individual, depending on their capacity. Now, some get angry, some bargain, some collapse into grievance, and some quietly accept responsibility and begin rebuilding capacity from the inside. Now, no one is destroyed from accountability. They're destroyed by the years spent avoiding it. Now, pressure didn't cause the collapse. Reality didn't cause it. Refusal did. Now, this isn't just about one person. It's also about a limit every human being lives with. We either expand that limit through responsibility, or we hit it through denial. You don't run out of chances, you run out of room. And here's the part that no one really likes to talk about. Because once everything false starts falling away, you don't immediately become better. You find out what's left. And that raises a harder question than guilt or blame ever did. What if the parts you're clinging to are the very things that have to burn before you're worthy of what you say you want? On one hand, we have the dragon, chaos, fear, what we refuse to face. Other hand, we have the gold, responsibility, order, meaning earned, not taken. And between the two of them, we have the cross. Not as a rescue, but as a burden because order isn't free. And chaos is what collects when we won't carry it. But before you stand, something has to burn. The parts that kept you alive once, but won't let you grow now. The dead wood. Now, if you like this content, hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. Follow. Leave a comment, and I'll be sure that I get back to you. Peace.